you will obey me, then you'll be what? Give me list some things here. What's he going to be?
Special treasure.
Special treasure or special possession. This word's very important. We'll see why soon enough, but right, you're going to be my special possession. You're going to be kingdom of priests, right?
Yep. Holy nation.
Holy nation. Okay, so pretty good stuff. But now notice, what does he say? If you obey me, then you're going to be my special possession. Okay, keep that in mind. Let's track with this. I'm going to do this a little bit out of order of the way I'd want to, but we'll do that for the sake of class. All right, turn to, let's see, turn to Deuteronomy chapter 4. All right, let's look at chapter 4, start at verse 20, and let's watch this. So Moses is talking to Israel. It says, "But the Lord has taken you and brought you out of the iron furnace from Egypt to be a people for his what?
Possession.
Own possession." Right? We just saw that, Exodus 19. So you're going to be a people of his own possession. Okay? Drop down a little bit to verse 25. "When you become the father of children and children's children, and have remained in the land, and act corruptly, and make an idol in the form of anything, and do that which is evil in the sight of the Lord, as to provoke him to anger, I call heaven and earth to witness against you today, that you will surely perish quickly from the land where you're going to possess across the Jordan. You shall not live long on it, but will be utterly destroyed. The Lord will scatter you among the peoples, and you will be left few in number among the nations where the Lord drives you. Then you will serve gods, the works of man's hand, wood and stone, which neither see, nor hear, nor eat. But you will seek the Lord your God. But from there you will seek the Lord your God. You will find him if you search for him with your whole heart. When you are in distress, all these things have come upon you. In the latter days you will return to the Lord your God and listen to his voice." In the what? In the Acharit, in the last days. "For the Lord your God is a compassionate God, and he will not fail you, nor destroy you, nor forget the covenant which he with your fathers, which he swore to them." So we're gonna walk through Deuteronomy in order. It's easier if I do it out of order, honestly, but we're gonna go ahead and do it. Right here, what does he tell them? He says, "I brought you out of Egypt." Okay, I'm to be my own possession, my segula. But then what does he say their children are going to do? They're going to act corruptly and sin against the Lord, and they're going to be scattered throughout the land. But someday, when they return to him with their whole heart, he's going to bring them back and have compassion on them. Now, it's amazing that he starts Deuteronomy with that, because let's go ahead and turn to, look at chapter 4, look at verse 37.
What were we at again?
Chapter 4 of Deuteronomy, verse 37. So he's talking to Israel again. Start at verse 36. "Out of the heavens he let you hear his voice to discipline you, and on earth he let you see his great fire, and you heard his words from the midst of the fire. Because he loved your fathers, therefore he chose their seed after them, and he personally brought you out of Egypt by his power." Now notice he's saying God chose you. He chose Israel, right? Chose their seed. Okay. With that being said, turn to chapter 7, verses in Deuteronomy, verses 6 through 8, and we're going to look at that. "For you are a holy people to the Lord your God. The Lord your God has chosen you to be a people for his own what?
Special treasure.
Yeah, segula, out of all the peoples who are on the face of the earth. The Lord your God The Lord did not set his love on you, nor choose you, because you were more in number than any of the peoples, for you were the fewest of all the peoples. But because the Lord your God loved you and kept the oath which he swore to your forefathers, the Lord brought you out by a mighty hand and redeemed you from the house of slavery, from the hand of Pharaoh. Again, he's saying, I chose you. Why did he choose them?
For the promise.
For the sake of their forefathers. Now, this is something I want to emphasize here. I've heard somebody preach this and say that this is talking about election, saying God salvifically chose them. Okay, and I've even heard people use it referring to us. Is this what's happening here?
No.
Is this choosing salvific? Now, do you guys see how sometimes we read our theology into the text? If you're following the text here, this choosing of Israel is not salvific by any stretch. That's not what's happening here. But they've been chosen for, well, it's not on the board anymore, for what?
Yeah. Their obedience is, their blessing is still contingent.
Contingent, and we're going to really fill this out in just a second. Yeah, if God has chosen them, now let's bank on what William said right there. I'm going to move forward on that. All right, turn to chapter 11 of Deuteronomy. This is where it really heats up. Okay, actually look at chapter 10 first, because I want to reemphasize this. Chapter 10, verse 15. Yet on your fathers did the Lord set his affection, and he chose their seed after them above all the peoples this day. How many times has he said that now? A lot.
Yeah.
Okay, you guys get that? This is going to play into election at some point, so we'll get to that in the weeks ahead probably. Look at chapter 11. Chapter 11, verse 13 through 14. Now, this is what we need to pay attention to. Someone read verse 13 and 14 in chapter 11.
And if you will indeed obey my commands, or commandments that I command you today, to love the Lord your God, to serve him with all your heart, with all your soul, he will give you the rain for your land in its seasons, the early rain and the latter rain, that you may gather in your grain and your wine and your oil.
Yeah, okay, so what again, if you obey me, lots of good stuff, right? So now, Lee, read verses 22 and 23 of the same chapter.
For if you will be careful to do all this commandment that I command you to do, love the Lord your God, walk in all your ways, and holding fast to him, then the Lord will drive out all of those nations before you, and you will be disposed nations, gathering and mightier than yourselves.
So if they keep his commandments, he's going to drive out the nations, right? The ones that are in front of him. All right, Lee, read verse 26 through 28.
Good night, man. Am I the only one who's singing? All right, what do you want me to do?
Read verse 26 through 28 of the same chapter.
See, I am setting before you today a blessing and a curse. The blessing if you obey the commandment of the Lord your God, which I command you today, and the curse if you do not obey the commandments of the Lord your God, but turn aside from the way that I am commanding you today to go after other gods that you have not known.
Now, if you obey me, what?
Blessing.
What if you don't?
You're doomed. You're done.
This covenant's not turned out to be what I was hoping it would, right? Okay, with that being said, let's keep going. Look at chapter 13 of Deuteronomy, verse 18 through chapter 14, verse 2. So this is more, I'll read this one. Chapter 13, verse 18. All right, key words here. If you will listen to the voice of the Lord your God, keeping all his commandments, which I am commanding you today, and doing what is right in the sight of the Lord. Before that, he's saying, good stuff. So if you'll do that, says, so again, we have the chapter 14. You are the sons of the Lord. You should not cut yourselves nor shave your forehead for the sake of the dead. Okay, is he talking to us? He's talking to Israel, right? All right, verse 2. For you are a holy people, said the Lord your God. The Lord has chosen you. Again, where's that word, chosen? To be a people for his own what? Segula, out of all the people who are on the face of the earth. Again, if you obey me, y'all have been chosen to be my segula. Okay, there's this contingency that's moving here. Let's go a little further. It's amazing how many times he says this. All right, turn to chapter 26, verse 18 and 19. Deuteronomy, chapter 26. The Lord has declared to you to be his people, to be a what? Special possession, as he promised you, that you should keep all his commandments, and he will set you high above the nations which he has made for praise and fame and honor, that you will be consecrated people to the Lord your God as he has spoken. So he says you're going to be my possession and you're going to be lifted high above the nations, right? Okay, now look at chapter 28, verse 1, and what's this? Okay, now it shall be, if you diligently obey the Lord your God, if you diligently obey the Lord your God, being careful to do all his commandments, which I have commanded you today, the Lord will set you high above the nations. Where did we just hear that? A second ago he says, you're my possession, Segula, I'm going to set you high above the nations. Here he says, if you obey me, then I will set you high above the nations. You guys seeing this contingency moving on here? Okay, look at verse 15 of chapter 28. But it shall come about, why don't you read this, William? Verse 15 of chapter 28.
But it shall come about, if you do not obey the Lord your God, to observe to do all his commandments and his statutes, with which I charge you today, that all these curses will come upon you and overtake you.
So what's the other? What happens if they don't? Curses. Okay. Now look at let's just go with, I'm going to pull this one right out of the middle of the sentence. Look at verse 58 again. He's the same idea. If you're not careful to observe all the words of this law which are written in the book, to fear the honored and awesome name of the Lord your God, then the Lord will bring extraordinary plagues on you and your seed, and a severe lasting plague, and miserable and chronic sickness. Okay, does this make sense enough? I mean, you guys, can I stop? You guys get what I'm trying to do? All right, with that being said, I'm going to emphasize it one more time. Turn to Leviticus 26. You're going to hear this stuff like 70 times, so just get used to it. I mean, because it's emphasized over and over. Leviticus 26. Man, there's so much going on. All right, for Leviticus 26, verses 12 forward, and I'm just going to read a lot. I will also walk among you, and be your God, and you shall be my people. I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, so that you would not be their slaves. I broke the bars of yoke, and made you walk erect. You guys know where that's from, Exodus. But if you do not obey me, and do not carry out all these commandments, remember this is the end of Leviticus here. If you do not carry out all these commandments, if instead you reject my statutes, and if your souls abhor my ordinances, so as to not carry out my commandment, and so break my covenant, I will in turn do this to you. I will appoint sudden terror and consumption, a fever that will waste away the eyes and cause your soul to pine away. Also, you will sow the seed uselessly, for your enemy will eat it. I will set my face against you, so that you will be struck down before your enemies. This is not good, right? You guys, like, it goes on for another 30 verses, but I'm not going to read it. It's not good. So if you don't keep his law, you're up the creek. Raise your hand if you want to be in this covenant. Okay. Look at verse 33. This is very important. I'm going to hit this 80 times. Verse 33 of Leviticus 26. You, however, I will scatter among the nations, and will draw out the sword, and you'll become a land, and your land shall become desolate, and your cities waste. So he's going to scatter them. You understand the movement that's happening? At some point, he's saying, if you don't obey me, I'm going to scatter you, you're going to be cursed, you're going to be kicked out of the land. So there's this movement that's happening there. We're going to stop with that, Leviticus. I think the point's been made clear enough. Turn back to Deuteronomy 28. Actually, do Deuteronomy chapter 5. Let's do that first. Okay, Deuteronomy chapter 5. So you guys get the point. Deuteronomy chapter 5, verse 1. Follow me with this. Then Moses summoned all Israel and said to them, Hear, O Israel, the statutes and ordinances which I am speaking to you today, in your hearing, that you may learn and observe them carefully. The Lord your God made a covenant with us at Horeb. Okay, so what's he talking about? It's Sinai, right? Sinai in Exodus. He makes this covenant with them. Someone read out loud with lots of emphasis.
Horeb are the same.
They're the same word, same place, Sinai and Horeb. So someone read verse 3 with lots of emphasis.
The Lord did not make this covenant with our fathers, but with us, all of those of us alive here today.
What just happened?
It's a very specific covenant.
It's a lasting covenant.
He says, this covenant, he's talking to Israel, and he says, this covenant was not made with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. You guys, this is a big deal. So is Abraham under this law?
Nope.
No, he's not. He's under a different covenant. The disobedient, stiff-necked Israel get tucked in this covenant right here. Is this covenant going to work out for them?
No.
Now think about it. They're chosen. They're the special possession. They're a kingdom of priests. Holy, like they get all these blessings. Okay. But this covenant wasn't made with their forefathers. Now let's look at how this is going to turn out. Turn to chapter 28, I think, Deuteronomy. And also, there's so much to say, I can't even... something else, William, you'll want to note, chapter 5, verse 22, says, these are the words the Lord spoke to the assembly at the mountain in the midst of the fire, and the cloud, and the thick gloom, with a voice, and he added no more. And he wrote them on the tablets of stone and gave it to them. Notice the adding, while he's talking to them. There's this adding of laws as the narrative goes, and the author's picking up on that. So that's a different topic. We'll talk about that later. All right, chapter 28. Now then, it will be, okay, actually, okay, let's look at verses, I think I missed this one. We'll read it for the fun of it. Chapter 28, verse 13 through 15. The Lord your God will make you head and not the tail. You will be above and you will not be beneath. If you listen to the commandments of the Lord, which I'm charging you today to observe them, and do not turn aside from these words which I command you, to the right, to the left, to go after other gods to serve them. But it shall come about, if you do not obey the Lord to observe all these commandments and the statutes, all the charges, all these curses will come upon you and overtake you. All right, chapter 29, verse 1. Someone read verse 1 for me.
These are the words of the covenant which the Lord commanded Moses to make with the sons of Israel in the land of Moab, beside the covenant which he had made with them at Horeb.
Whoops.
The covenant. What was the word? There's a word in there I want someone to pick up on.
Besides the covenant which he made.
Besides the covenant. Is this chapter 29 starting to talk about a different covenant? Okay.
Looks like it.
I think it's the same covenant and dealing with the same promises that we find in Genesis 13 and 28. Right? Talking about Christ. There's a different covenant. This is the covenant besides the one at Horeb. And we're going to start, probably not today, but we're going to start pulling this thing apart because this is huge. Okay. So with that being said, we're going to move.
So you're saying now we're starting to go into the other covenant?
Yeah, we're starting to look at the second covenant, a different covenant. Okay, and there's a lot that's going to take place under the umbrella here, and we're going to try to unpack it to some degree. Okay, look at verse 22 of chapter 29. Now the generations to come, your sons who rise up after you, and the foreigner who comes from a distant land, when they see the plagues of the land and the diseases which the Lord has inflicted it, they will say, all its land is brimstone and salt and burning and waste and unsown and unproductive, and no grass grows in it. It's like the overthrow of Sodom and Gomorrah and Admah and Zeboim, which the Lord overthrew in his anger and his wrath. All the nations will say, why has the Lord done this to the land? Why this great outburst of anger? Then men will say, because they forsook the covenant of the Lord their God of their fathers, which he made with them, when he brought them out of the land of Egypt. They went and served other gods and worshipped them, gods whom they had not known, gods who he had not allotted to them. Therefore the anger of the Lord burned against the land, to bring upon it every curse which is written in this book. Again, so it's talking about the future, what's going to happen.
curses.
Yeah, all the curses are going to come down on them. We'll cheat one more time, and we'll go back to chapter 29. Look at chapter 31, verse 16. The Lord said to Moses, "Behold, you're about to lie down with your fathers, and this people will arise and play the harlot with strange gods in the midst of the land which they are going, and they will forsake me, and they will break my covenant." So what does God say is going to happen? They're going to break the covenant. Yeah, it's coming. The heat's coming, boys, and they're not going to get away from it. All right, this is a really big deal. I'm going to try to unpack this pretty quick. I wish we had 15 hours to do this, but we just don't. Chapter 29, verse 29. So he just tells them, he says, "Hey, by the way, you're going to get uprooted. You're going to be kicked out of the land. Curses. It's going to happen." Okay, now as an Israelite, you should be thinking something. Why did God just give us this covenant, which is not going to work and is going to bring curses on us? Why would he do that? God's got something up his sleeve here. Why is God doing this? You understand what I'm saying? That's a legitimate question. What's going on here?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You're going to kick our seed out. It's going to fall apart. We're going to be cursed. Read verse 29. What is God's response? David, read verse 29.
Secrets belong to the Lord our God, but those things which are revealed belong to us and to our children forever, that we may do the words of this Torah.
So what's Moses' response? Look, guys, God's got something up his sleeve. The secret things belong to the Lord. All right, God's doing something. I don't know what he's doing something, but the things revealed belong to us, that we may do them. So his response is this: God's got something up his sleeve. He's doing something here. Doesn't matter. You need to obey him. You guys catch that? So there's this mystery here that's happening. There's a secret. There's a mystery. He's planning something, right? God's got something up his sleeve. Let me give you a taste of that, and then we're going to really crack it open. This is what I'd call cheating, but look at chapter 32 of Deuteronomy, verse 43.
Words in there we can do.
I know. I'll probably get kicked out if someone tells on me.
Chapter 2, verse 40.
Chapter 32, verse 43 of Deuteronomy.
You want us to read it?
Yeah, will someone read that? Well, actually, hold on one second. The reason I don't want you to read it is because the translation's wrong.
Well, then you read it.
I will.
Deuteronomy 32.
Yeah, 43. 32, 43. All right, so let's crack this up real quick. And he says,
Cliffhanger, huh?
that's it, man.
I can't read all that gibberish.
You will soon. Okay, go ahead and spoil it for us, David. What does it say?
I can't read you.
The first word. Hey, that's okay. All right, you know what? I'll spoil it. Rejoice.
Oh. Okay.
What is a goyim?
Nations.
What is amo?
His people.
Yes, that part is right.
Rejoice, nations. His people. What does your English translation say?
Rejoice, O nations, with his people.
Where does the with come from?
Nowhere.
There is no with anywhere. Why does your translation have? You know what? It doesn't matter why your translation has that. Just okay. I can understand why somebody would have a problem with this translation, because the Torah has been about Israel, right? God says, "Rejoice, O nations, his people." Now let's finish reading the verse here for chapter 32, verse 43. For he will avenge the blood of his servants and render vengeance on his adversaries, and he will atone for his land and his people. Who are his people?
The nation.
And what's he going to do for them?
Atone.
Atone for them. Okay. So God's got something up his sleeve, right? Okay. There's so much more I'd like to say. Let's see.
What about the end of verse 43? And will atone for his land, his people.
Right.
Yes.
I caught on to that too.
Yes.
And Isaiah picks up on that.
I know.
later.
It does. Stop
So
it.
then we go from
Okay.
talking about physical land to he's really putting together several people.
Welcome to Isaiah. Because the whole book of Isaiah, God is talking about this land that he's going to reign upon and bring righteousness. The land will act righteously. There's this motif unlocks Isaiah right here. Okay. But we can't hit that today. We're just going to stop. So I can't do that. All right. With that being said, also look at chapter 32, verse 20. Let's go with 18. Chapter 32, verse 18. You neglected the rock who begot you. You forgot the God who gave birth to you. The Lord saw this and spurned them because of the provocation of his sons and daughters. And he said, I will hide my face from them. He's talking about Israel. And I will see what their end shall be, for they are a perverse generation, sons in whom there is no faithfulness. They have made me jealous with what is not God. They have provoked me to anger with idols, so I will make them jealous with lo ami, with not a people. And I will provoke them to anger with a foolish nation. So what does God say? Because Israel's cheating on me, I'm going to make them jealous with another nation. Did we talk about this in the first week?
A little bit. First or second week, a little bit.
Yeah, I'm going to make them jealous with a people that's not a people. Okay, turn to
Think
Hosea.
about that, a foolish nation, a nation without land.
Yeah, maybe so.
Isaiah, you said?
Hosea chapter 1 and 2, and then we're going to crack open the New Testament and try to blow some people's minds.
Romans.
Yeah, I know it. All right, Hosea, good luck finding it. Chapter 1, verse 10. Yet the number of the sons of Israel will be like the sands of the sea, which cannot be measured. And in that place where it is said to them, you are not my people. And in that place where it is said to them, you are not my people, it will be said to them, you are sons of the living God. Okay, right here, who is not God's people at this point?
Those who disobey.
Well, not quite. With what's going on here.
That's not Israel.
Yeah, there's only one group that's chosen right now. Israel. So who is not God's people?
Everybody else.
Everybody else. In that place where it is, let me just read it again. Where it is said to them, you are not my people, it shall be said to them, you are sons of the living God. Now this motif here, the not my people, that's the same phrase used in Deuteronomy 32. I'm going to make you jealous with not a people. Right here. In that place where it's not a people, they're going to be called the sons of the living God. Okay, chapter 2 of Hosea, verse 23. And I will sow for myself in the land, land, and I'll also have compassion on her who has not obtained compassion. And I will say to those people who are lo-am, who are not my people, you are my people. And they will say, you are my God. So again, who's going to be brought into this? Who's going to be brought into relationship with God?
Those outside of
Nations.
Israel.
Right. Okay. Romans, Paul picks it up, but let's with that being said, turn to Ephesians chapter 2, and we're going to start reaming it here with our last 5 minutes. I know it bugs me. Okay, remember that mystery?
Yeah.
So the mysterious things belong to God. Look at Ephesians chapter 2, and start at verse. Let's start at verse 11. Therefore, remember, Ephesians chapter 2, that formerly you, the Gentiles in the flesh, who were called the uncircumcision, by the so-called circumcision, which is performed in the flesh by human hands. Remember, you Gentiles, that you were at a time separated from Christ, excluded from the commonwealth of Israel, and strangers to the covenant of promise, having no hope without God in the world. What's he talking about?
First Covenant.
Yeah, you're outside. Does this make sense now? You guys understand how this Ephesians starts making sense? Okay. 13, but now in Christ, you who were formerly far off have been brought near by the blood of Christ. For he himself is our peace, who made both groups into one and broke down the barrier of the dividing wall by abolishing in his flesh the enmity which is the law and the commandments contained in ordinances, so that in himself he might make the two into one, and thus establishing peace, and might reconcile both groups to one body, to God through the cross, having put to death the enmity. He came to preach peace to you who are far off and peace to those who are near. For through him we both have access in one spirit to the Father, so that you are no longer strangers and aliens, but you are fellow citizens and saints of God's household. Okay, look at chapter 3, verse 1. For this reason I, Paul, prisoner of Christ Jesus, for the sake of you Gentiles, if indeed you've heard of the stewardship of God's grace given to me for you, that by revelation there was made known to me the what? The mystery. As I wrote in before, but referring to this, when you read, you can understand my insight into the mystery of Christ, which in other generations was not made known to the sons of men. In Deuteronomy, was this mystery clear? Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is connecting directly to Deuteronomy 29. Why did God do all this with Israel? He had a plan. There was a mystery here. Verse 5, in other generations this mystery was not made known to the sons of men. It has now been revealed to us and his holy apostles and prophets, to be specific that the Gentiles are fellow heirs, fellow members of the body, and fellow partakers of the promises in Christ through the gospel. Let's just go ahead and stop there. So God gave Israel this covenant, which is going to fail. Why did he do it? Well, he had a plan. And what was that plan?
Bring Gentiles in.
Yeah, bring the Gentiles into the covenant. Does that make sense? You guys see how Ephesians is kind of busted open there? We're going to camp on this more. We're out of time. There's just too much material to cover. I apologize if today was a bit scattered, just because you guys see how much we're having to hit here. There's so much material. We're going to spend the next 2 or 3 weeks unpacking this. I mean, we'll have time to go at it again. But yeah, so the mystery is set in Deuteronomy, but God had a plan. You guys see how God had predetermined to bring the Gentiles into the covenant?
Yeah.
All right. Predestined. This is going to play into election. Okay, if you want to have a proper understanding of election, this will play into that here, and we'll talk about that in a couple weeks. But let's go ahead and call it quits. William, you shut us in prayer.